it, but the way Michael Ruth put it is, this book makes me embarrassed.
Yes, but that's why he's embarrassed about it. That's the
Well, I think
specific
you've made your
complaint.
point. I'm going to move on, man. The crowd are getting bored. I'm going to get rid of him.
They're getting bored, but anyway, it was nice
Thanks,
frying.
Monkfish. Laters.
Thank you.
Wish you all the best, Monkfish.
You know, the thing is, Hamza, look, you know when
Wait,
people...
Tom. Wait, Tom. Hold your powder dry.
Yeah, you know, people like Monkfish, when they start throwing out insults, don't throw them out. That's when he's stuck. So when you threw him out, he's basically trying to get out of that situation. And a few times he tried to do this. And what's very important for us to do is, I'm not interested. And like the other guy, what's his name? J Mike, whatever. Or Monkfish tried to come up with some nuances. I'm not interested in, nor is any of us interested in just generally talking about what a particular atheist believes or doesn't believe. What we're doing is we're critiquing this new atheist movement, right? And if we're going to talk about their views, then we're going to go to their books. And one thing that they absolutely hate and cannot stand is the sort of things which I just pointed out, which is, how is it that if you guys really do represent science and you think you're at the forefront of in the new enlightenment or whatever you call it, how is it that major figures criticize you guys so severely? And that's why he was not happy to admit the Massimo criticism, and he was not happy to admit the Rus criticism.
But what I thought, though, is if he's saying you were wrong about this, that, the other, and it's a very simple format, what he said, how you're wrong about it. So he says you were wrong about this, Massimo, Flex, and Dawkins, but then he admitted, yeah, he did say that. And then he tried to challenge what Massimo said. All you're doing, don't shoot the messenger, mate. I'm just quoting what your mate Massimo said. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah.
And your beef is with Massimo and what he thinks. Wait, I'm just telling you what he said. How am I a liar if Massimo got it wrong? If he got it wrong. Anyway, Tom, just so you know the format, because it went everywhere last time, and leave the vegetarian eagles. Yeah. Basically, just if you've heard anything today that you disagree with, just tell us what you've heard, why you disagree with it. Yeah, so we can just keep it. We're talking about the history of science. If you accept that Islam isn't opposed to science, we can move on to the Darwinian evolution flex, if you like. Go on, Tom. The floor's yours.
Yeah, sure. So there's two things I was really interested in. One is when Imran mentioned that methodological naturalism can't make supernatural claims, and that's not actually true. It totally can. There's no problem with that at all. Methodological naturalism says that no supernatural claims are justified yet, but that doesn't exclude them as a possibility at all. In fact, there's a huge base of published papers in academia on parapsychology for supernatural things. So methodological naturalism does not in any way exclude the supernatural.
Well, there's a whole bunch of definitions of methodological naturalism. There isn't just one definition, but the predominating way that it's operating is in that way that there is really nothing supernatural. So if, for example, I try and come up with the idea that, we're studying something in neuroscience, and I have a hypothesis, and my hypothesis is there's actually a soul from the Islamic or Christian perspective, that would be thrown out completely from a practical point of view. If I was to make the claim that actually there is a God, and God is actually interfering in the universe, and things are being run by God directly. If I was to make any of these metaphysical claims practically, and I was somewhere, I would be absolutely shot down. So what we need to do is we need to understand, look, I as a Muslim, I have no problem with working within the parameters of methodological naturalism. My biggest problem is when people use the fact that we have methodological naturalism to try and come up with the conclusion that therefore philosophical naturalism is true. Because I think that's a fallacy, as Massimo points out. And since, last time as well, you introduced yourself as a new Muslim, new atheist, just to make sure that we're all on the same page, we are going to be talking about new atheism today. Yeah, we're not going to be talking about like what any particular person believes or all the rest.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
All right, so yeah, that's just simply false.
Imran, how would you respond? Sorry, Tom. How would you respond to Tom's claim to you, Imran, that you're wrong?
So for me, this is quite interesting actually, because often people cite things like prayer experiments, and similarly with the paranormal experiments. Now, the problem actually for me is, and again, non-philosophical background, but what you need to posit is actually some method of causation or some effect that's happening. So something is going on that's linked to an effect that you're seeing, an observation, and you have to evidence that. And there is no causation that you can point to. So something that you can look at and examine and say, this is how this is happening in those experiments. So people maybe people are writing about this stuff, but it's not how science as we understand it is done in generally speaking in everything else. So it's like taking a sort of an esoteric thing that some people are doing and saying, look, we're doing this. Some people are looking at ghosts, for example. That means science can look at the supernatural. It doesn't unless it can propose a method or some way of a causation happening that this is what's going on. So science. So what does science do? It looks at observations and it gives you an explanation of how this is happening. And the theories that are posited are always based on natural explanations. So there is no, as far as, I mean, I've heard of some of these, and I think that they're mostly ridiculed in the scientific world and not taken seriously at all. So you can use that as an example, but I don't think it's valid. Tom.
All right, Tom. Next point.
No, I'm still on that one. So what you guys said is just patently false. Like all of those have methodological papers where they give an actual do this method to get this result kind of a system for parapsychology and for souls and for brains. You can find these examples in academic journals all the time. No one in methodological naturalism at all excludes the supernatural. It's just not a thing. Methodological naturalism is only using things that have already been verified as a basis for reasonable conclusions. But if you want to put in something new, that's perfectly fine. You just need an experimental result to justify it. So methodological naturalism does not in any way exclude the supernatural at all. Like all of these things are perfectly reasonable to put forth as hypotheses if you can justify it with a testable result. And so the soul, no problem. Parapsychology, no problem. Rupert Sheldrake is one proponent who puts it forth quite rigorously in many academic journals. Like methodological naturalism doesn't in any way exclude the supernatural. It's just not a part of it at all.
Okay, so let me propose a theory. So I'm going to propose a theory for you.
Sorry,
go on.
Can I just 1 second? So the thing is, TJump, we can't use people like Rupert Sheldrake because they're just like absolutely ridiculed. People don't take them seriously. Now, when it comes to this particular thing, which I was saying earlier, and you're trying to say methodological naturalism allows supernatural explanations. So I just want to read out something from Piglucci here. This is Science and Society, Science and Fundamentalism, published in 2005. And he's talking here about Dawkins, but it goes over some very important points. The fallacy, and he's talking about here the God delusion, the fallacy lies in the fact that most people, including, alas, prominent science popularizers such as Richard Dawkins, do not make the subtle but crucial distinction between methodological and philosophical naturalism. Naturalism, broadly speaking, is the idea that there is only nature and that the supernatural realm and phenomena do not exist. As a philosophical position, it has a long history of elaboration and debate. Philosophical naturalism then is the strong metaphysical position that there is, as a matter of fact, no such thing as a supernatural nor a higher being, which obviously characterizes any individual who considers themselves to be an atheist. Methodological naturalism, however, is a metaphysically more modest claim. It takes the position that while there may be a supernatural realm or being, it does not enter and does not need to be invoked in any discussions of scientific findings. So your main sort of narrative that you're trying to come off with today is just absolutely false. Methodological naturalism is a distinct thing that we have in science. And philosophical naturalism is not entailed by methodological naturalism. And methodological naturalism limits the hypotheses that you can actually make. And the very fact that you brought out Rupert Sheldrake, right? Rupert Sheldrake, he was absolutely attacked by these new atheists. His TED talk was banned, right? PZ Myers and all these atheists came. The very fact that you had to use a person who's been absolutely shunned and ridiculed and banned to try and make this point shows clutching at straws here. This is a really fringe thing. So
no, not true.
If methodological naturalism is the way that you just defined it, oh yeah, everything goes, yep, you can add everything in there. Why call it methodological naturalism? Why not call it just free for all? You know, it's absolutely fine. There's a reason why it's called methodological naturalism, as in we're going to go for natural effects and natural causes. And I hope this quotation from Piglucci makes it clearer.
Actually, no, it completely agrees with me. I don't think you understood it. So the reason that methodological naturalism only allows for naturalistic explanations is because only naturalistic explanations have ever been verified. So the reason we're excluding the supernatural...
Wait. Only naturalistic explanations have ever been verified?
Yeah.
So when you make a claim like that, you're basically saying that supernatural explanations have never been verified, or that science allows supernatural explanations to be verified.
Yes, it does. It's quite simple. That's like why I mentioned all of the academic papers. And Schubert Sheldrake, people's personal opinion of him doesn't matter. He has published academic papers. If you have published academic papers, that means they are taking it seriously. They're not retracted.
So can I just want to come very so Rupert Sheldrake was he was an author. He wasn't a scientist, and he did some research into parapsychology, and it's called pseudoscience. This is actually what it's referred to, generally rejected by the scientific community. Now, let me give you a theory. I was about to propose a theory for you. Yeah. So if you take any phenomena, let's just take gravity for example. Yeah. And if you said, okay, the way that gravity works is when you drop, say you drop a ball and it hits the ground, there are these unseen gremlins that are grabbing onto this ball and it's yanking it down into the ground. Okay. What's my evidence for this, proposing this theory is, well, actually, if you take as many observations as you like and take this ball anywhere you like and you drop the ball and it's happening, and this is the theory that I'm proposing for it. How are you going to verify that or falsify that? How are you going to do that?
You would make novel testable predictions. So you'd say, if the gremlins are there, then you could pray to the gremlins and have it go left, or pray to the gremlins and have it go right.
No, you're taking the theory somewhere where it isn't. The theory is that the reason the ball is falling is that gremlins are holding on to some substance within the ball and then bringing it down to the ground. Any gravitational phenomena that you come across, so orbiting planets, etc., light bending around other objects, this is these gremlins that are grabbing hold of these particles and they're bending them around, and this is what's causing this to happen. Now, I want you to tell me if you can, A, if you can verify that, B, if you can falsify that, and see if that's an acceptable theory to propose for a paper, and if not, why not?
For a theory to be acceptable, it needs to make testable predictions. So if your theory makes testable predictions,
all the predictions you can make with gravity, all the predictions you can make with gravity,
it has to be a novel prediction. It has to be a new prediction that we don't know yet. If you're just making the same predictions, that's called post hoc theorization. That's not evidence for anything. So you can't post hoc theorize anything in science. You need to make novel predictions. Predict something new we don't know yet, like Einstein predicted a new curvature of light around the sun. You have to predict something new.
So no, hang a sec. So you're taking there's a conflation here. So what's happening is something already known about how gravity is sort of operating, and proposing a different theory for how that is operating is not it's not post hoc ad hoc analysis. Now, what you're saying is that if you're taking the only way you can make a new theory is to look at something that hasn't been already described before, and that doesn't make sense. What you can do is you can take something that's known as an observation, and you can bring a theory explaining how this would be working. So now I've proposed one to you. Now,
sorry to interrupt. That is literally the definition of post hoc theorization. That cannot be used to justify a new theory. You can use that to make a hypothesis, but in order to make the hypothesis reasonable, you need to then make novel testable predictions based off that hypothesis and then confirm them.
So I just want to understand you. So if you do an experiment, let me just take something even more simple. All metals expand when heated. Let's take that as a hypothesis. Yeah. And if I give an alternative explanation for that, until that alternative explanation makes an additional prediction, it's not acceptable. Is that what you're saying?
Right. You can't post hoc theorize. That's why none of the theories in quantum mechanics are accepted yet, because all they're doing is.
So I don't want you to change the topic to another thing. I want you to specifically because you're moving on.
I'm specifically giving you an example in science that demonstrates this is the case. So everything in quantum mechanics, we do not have a solution for what the correct interpretation of quantum mechanics is. It's because every one of the theories is just looking at the past evidence and explaining it, but none have made new novel predictions. So the reason they are not accepted is because none have made the new predictions. Every one of them can explain the past data, but none of them provide new data, so none of them are accepted. You need the new data for it to be accepted.
So if you make a theory and it explains everything that's happened, but not following the generally understood mechanisms that are taken, it's not valid at all until you predict something new. Is that what you're saying?
Right. That's called post hoc rationalization.
Okay, so this doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever, and I'll tell you why it doesn't make any sense to me. Because if you take something like gravity, and you can take the same observations and you can have another explanation for it, which can also be correct. So, for example, in Newton, the idea that gravity was a pulling force, and with Einstein, the idea that gravity was a pushing force, i.e., it warped the matter around it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the observations in terms of what was being used essentially is the same.
Yep.
Was it accepted until was it accepted, or was it only accepted after other evidence came to verify it? So when Einstein gave his theory, obviously the new observations weren't present. Is that right?
Correct, which is why it was not accepted until after the observations were confirmed. So
when Einstein gave his theory of relativity, it was not accepted. Is that what you're saying to me?
Correct. It was rejected, and it was hard for him to get it published. 6 months after it was published, he still got no recognition. It was only after his experiment with the sun was verified by other scientists that he got recognition. So yes, it wasn't until after his hypothesis was verified that he got recognition.
So he had published this already. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. But you're saying it wasn't accepted despite it being published.
Correct.
Okay, so now I'm going to take you back to your point with with Sheldrake. So the fact that he's published something doesn't mean that it's accepted, right?
Correct. The consensus is that parapsychology isn't accepted.
So the point that now understanding your point now. So the point that you initially were making with Sheldrake was, well, he's published it, therefore it's accepted. Is actually not correct.
No, I'm saying that methodological naturalism does not reject the supernatural. So they didn't toss out the paper. Like you specifically said that if you put in like a soul hypothesis in the paper, that would be tossed out. That's just false. Like academic journals are happy to accept supernatural explanations in papers and publish those papers all the time. There's no exclusion of the supernatural in methodological naturalism, except in the fact that you need to justify.
Again, look, TJump, you keep saying that. Look, I've got this quotation of Piglucci. You said I didn't understand it.
Correct.
Methodological naturalism is a metaphysically more modest claim. It takes the position that while there may be a supernatural realm or being. Now listen to this part.
I heard you the first time. You still don't understand it.
You really didn't understand it.
No,
it does not enter and need. It does not look, Imran. Tell me if I'm reading this wrong. It does not enter and need to be invoked in any discussions of scientific findings.
I mean, it's straightforward. How do you understand that? Tom, how do you understand that?
I've already explained this before. So again, it's because none of them have been verified. Like if you see a hoof print in the snow.
No, not that part.
Let me clarify here. Let me because I've.
No, Tom, listen to what I'm saying to you, because you're not answering my question. I'll ask you again. What does it mean where it says it does not enter and need not be invoked in any discussion of scientific findings? What does that mean?
That's literally what I'm answering. So if you see a hoof print in the snow, you do not invoke a unicorn. You invoke a horse, because horses you already have evidence for. So methodological naturalism is saying we can only invoke the horses, not the unicorn, to explain the hoof print. Now, if you have some additional evidence that can show that the unicorn exists, then that would be reasonable to invoke. But until you do that, you can't invoke unicorns.
Your definition of methodological naturalism contradicts the Piglucci one I just put up.
No, I've literally spoken to him about this. It does not.
No, it does, because what we have in front of us right now is this. It does not enter and need to be invoked in any discussions of scientific findings. Now, you did this. What you're doing now is you're adding something else supplementary, which is the reason why naturalistic explanations are favored is because they're verified when supernatural ones are not. That claim that you're making is a separate claim, and it does not go against what's being said here. It really doesn't. Yeah.
It doesn't go against it because it's the same thing. So why it does not enter and it does not need to be invoked is because it's not verified.
Look, God's existence is something which science can't verify. Yes or no?
False. We can verify it if you make the right claims.
Okay. So you're saying God, the transcendent creator, is a scientific hypothesis.
Yeah, lots of gods are testable.
Again, you're not really getting my point here. What you're basically doing is this. You're saying
I can
God,
prove it.
look, this is just a joke, to be very fair with you.
So do you want me to prove it?
God.
What you got, sorry, I'm interested. What are you going to prove?
One second, Hamza.
That God is testable. I can prove that a transcendent God is testable.
Hamza, let's deal with one thing at a time. Yeah.
Go on.
God, by definition, the belief in God that we have is a being that is unseen. So we believe we can arrive at God's existence using reason, using fitra, our natural inclination, but not observation. Science deals with observation. So how can you use something which its main operation is using observation to observe the unobservable? It doesn't make any sense, Tom. And this definition of methodological naturalism, which we have here, this definition, it rules out this idea that you can just willy-nilly in science add in hypotheses which are supernatural. You simply cannot do that.
No. So you can use indirect observation, which is something commonly used in science. So what you do is you say, if a transcendent God exists, and I can pray to this God to give me a golden brick, and a golden brick appears in front of me every time I pray, that would be verification of your God. You don't need to directly observe the God.
Wait, Tom, that would not be verification of the concept of God that I just said. That would be verification of a cartoon, right? A God that no one believes in. That's what that would be a verification of. You made
Sabor, it doesn't matter what the God does.
No, no, you know what you've done, Tom, right? We're talking about our concept of God, transcendent God. You've come up with a straw man, which is a God that when you click your fingers, you get a Ferrari. Oh, I didn't get a Ferrari. Therefore, this concept of God doesn't exist.
The gold brick doesn't matter. The gold brick is just an example.
It does matter, because what you've done is we're talking about the existence of a transcendent creator. You've made a straw man, and you've used that to try and disprove our point. And it doesn't make any sense.
Sabor, it doesn't matter. It's just a random example I thought of in my head. The point is that you can make testable predictions based off of a transcendent being.
But you're not using a random example here. You're using a random example to make a general point. That's what you're doing. And that random example, if it's a straw man, we're going to point you out as a straw man.
No. The example was, can you make a testable prediction of a transcendent being? So I just imagined a transcendent being, which is my God, not yours.
Yeah, but Tom, the point here is that your imagination of the transcendent being.
No. This is my transcendent being. This is only mine, not yours. So I'm saying.
So let me ask you a question, Tom. A magician comes up to you, right?
Sure.
And he says, I'm going to pray to my God that a rabbit comes out of this hat, yeah? And then a rabbit comes out of the hat. Do you now believe God exists?
If it's novel, testable, falsifiable, verifiable, yes.
Right. So what's your first result? What's your first thought when you see the rabbit come out of the hat?
Well, since we already see rabbits, there's nothing novel about it. It has to be a novel prediction. So.
Oh, but it's come out of a hat from nowhere.
Right. So if it was a novel prediction, that would be good evidence.
So a magician pulls a rabbit out of a hat. You now believe that this God exists?
No, because we've already seen rabbits in hat. That's not novel. It has to be novel.
You've already seen gold bricks. What's that got to do with anything?
I've never seen a gold brick materialize in front of me. That would be really cool.
You haven't seen a rabbit come out of a hat?
Yes, I've seen lots of rabbits come out of
Right, and why is that not God?
Because it's not novel. It's not a novel testable prediction.
What's the first time the rabbit came out of the hat?
Which is something common. So if you say, like, I saw the sunrise tomorrow, that wouldn't be evidence of God either. We've all seen the sunrise.
No, but you have to pull something from nowhere. For me, you get rinsed by Dynamo and David Blaine and all that. They'll show you miracles, mate.
Can you share my screen, please?
Yeah, 1 second.
No, all those things they've done are things we've already seen. So none of that is novel. You need is a novel testable prediction. So if you can.
This is something interesting which I thought I'd bring up, which is what Richard Lewontin says about this, right? It's not the methods and institutions of science somehow compel us to accept a material explanation for the phenomenal world, but on the contrary, that we are forced by our a priori adherence to material causes to create an apparatus of investigation and a set of concepts that produce material explanations, no matter how counterintuitive, no matter how mystifying to the uninitiated. Moreover, that materialism is absolute, for we cannot allow a divine foot in the door. If that's not explicitly clear, I don't know what is. And
that's philosophical naturalism, so that's not what we're talking about. I don't know.
No, he's talking about in science. It's not the methods and institutions of science somehow compel us to accept a material explanation of the phenomenal world. He's talking in the context of
Materialism is absolute. That's literally the definition of philosophical naturalism.
Yes, and he here is talking about explanations being used within science. So within science, they cannot allow a divine foot in the door.
Right, because he's a philosophical naturalist. So I don't know why you brought that up.
Wait. Tom, do you now finally realize? Do you finally realize?
No, remember, Sabor, there's a difference between...
You realize you've shot yourself in the foot right now?
No, you have.
You don't realize you shot yourself in the foot right now.
Sabor, remember,
You said divine, you said supernatural explanation could be used. Methodological naturalism doesn't discount them. Here we have a direct scientist saying the opposite, and you're like, oh no, that's not what he means. Like, we could do that all day. We could just keep. I can.
No.
That this is what a scientist says. You can say, well, that's not what he really meant. What he really meant was this.
No, Sabor, there's a difference between methodological naturalism and philosophical naturalism. As you've pointed out, he is a philosophical naturalist. He is not talking about methodological naturalism. He is a philosophical naturalist. Those are two different things.
Do I have to read it out to you again? He's talking about within the institutions of science, you cannot have non-material explanations.
Sabor, the quote literally said, materialism is absolute. That is literally the definition of philosophical naturalism. That is not methodological naturalism. Like, what are you talking about?
Look, okay, do you know what? I'm going to read it out again because you simply don't understand. Like, and
materialism is absolute. Is literally
similar last time when you refused to admit that Dawkins was wrong about something. Yeah,
he wasn't.
You're just doing the same thing again.
I was right again.
You were not right. You were very much.
While you're looking for that, Sabor, I just want to, unless you find it very quickly. So interestingly, when you gave your gold brick experiment, one of the things you said was, "This is my conception of God." And I think this is the problem that happens, actually. You tend to make these sort of straw men gods, and then you propose that as a God that will give you a gold bar as soon as you sort of request one, as something that actually would be something that any theist would accept as any model for a God.
Well, no, I would never do that.
Now, there's no one here who accepts that that a God would exist who would give you a gold bar just when you requested one.
Right.
So
I never said that.
The experiment itself is flawed because it's not looking for the right thing. Does that make any sense to you?
No, none at all. Because again, the question was, can we make a testable prediction for a transcendent being? I gave an example of, here is a transcendent being, like if it would give us gold bricks. That is one we can test for. So yeah, it is possible.
Tom, so here, this is what I'm saying to you. So you've missed the point. So what you're doing is you're imagining a transcendent being who would give you a gold bar, and say, if there was a transcendent being who, whenever I asked for a gold bar, would give me a gold bar. If that being existed, then the way I would test that is by asking for a gold bar, and every time I got a gold bar, that transcendent being would exist. Yeah. No one believes amongst us that there is a transcendent being who, whenever you ask for a gold bar, would give you a gold bar.
Okay. I never said you did.
How is that evidence for finding the existence of God, for example?
So remember, your question was, is it possible? Is it logically possible, like in any possible world, doesn't matter if we believe it or not, is it logically possible to do a test that could verify a transcendent being? And I'm like, yes, it is. If there was a transcendent being like this, doesn't matter if anybody believes in it, then we could test for this kind of transcendent being.
Yeah, so this is exactly the point that I was making. So you've made up a transcendent being that no one accepts.
Right.
Yeah. So Imran, yes, like your point is quite clear. Like it's just a straw man, right? But anyway, about this, like this particular quotation, which all Tom could read is materialism is absolute. Like he was absolutely blind to everything else. From the very beginning, we can see this quotation is about science, our willingness to accept scientific claims that are against common sense. And this is about science and the supernatural. In this context, we're being told divine explanations are not allowed a foot in the door within science. This is what Richard Lewontin's talking about. So it's very important that when methodological naturalism is being put forward, that we understand, you know what, we can accept it as a working assumption, but this doesn't lead to philosophical naturalism. Now, Tom is again and again and again, despite all of the evidences we're giving, he's still like, no. Within science, you can have divine explanations. You can have supernatural explanations. They perfectly fit, right? But This is the exact opposite of what Richard Lewontin's saying and other scientists are saying. So I don't see how, Tom, your position has any weight.
Because philosophical naturalism is also a scientific position. That's philosophical naturalism. Like, if you are a philosophical naturalist, then you believe that you can't ever put divine explanations ever in anything because materialism is absolute. That's literally talking about philosophical naturalism. Like,
This is talking about methodological naturalism.
Where does it say that? Where does it say methodological anywhere in that?
Look, it doesn't need to say methodological. What is it saying? It's talking about science, and it's talking about within science, there's a commitment to materialism. And that materialism is that they're forced by the a priori adherence. What does a priori mean? A priori means before observation. Before observation, Tom. So I want you to just at least understand, right? Before we get down to whether you're going to admit that Richard Dawkins is wrong about methodological naturalism and philosophical naturalism, at least understand that methodological naturalism rules out supernatural explanations.
No, that's philosophical naturalism. I'm literally just reading this off of the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy.
You simply don't understand what's going on.
No, I do. I'm literally reading this off of the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Philosophical naturalism.
I'm reading out something to you that's crystal clear.
Where does that say methodological naturalism? It doesn't anywhere.
Talking about scientific claims.
So is philosophical naturalism. It's also talking about scientific claims. So that does not help your case at all.
Look, what it is divine explanations are not accepted by Richard Lewontin. Do you at least admit that?
Yes, he's a philosophical naturalist.
And he's a methodological naturalist.
Where does it say that?
He's talking about scientific claims, and within the scientific claims, they don't accept divine claims.
If you just Google his name, you can find an explanation of his actual position. He is a philosophical naturalist. So he's also going to be.
I already know he's a philosophical naturalist. What I'm saying to you is he's talking about the way that science actually works, and science doesn't accept supernatural explanations.
Which is philosophical naturalism. So he's not talking about methodological naturalism. He's talking about philosophical naturalism, which also happens to talk about science.
Look, Tom, let's deal with one thing at a time. Is he talking about science in this passage?
Yes.
Yes. And he's talking about within the way that his understanding of science, you do not accept supernatural explanations.
Which is called philosophical naturalism. Yes.
But he's doing that within the realm of science. And he believes that is a commitment to materialism science has.
Which is called philosophical naturalism. Yes.
Well, it's not. Philosophical naturalism can exist even if the scientific method did not. Do you agree with that?
Sure.
Yes. So here he's talking about within the field of science, you have to be committed to only material causes. Yes or no?
No, he's talking about from philosophical naturalism. Like this is literally his position. This is not, there's no ambiguity there. Find where he says methodological anywhere in
it, because he's talking about science here. That's why.
Talking about science does not mean methodological. You talk about science and ontology.
You can't be so dumb to actually think it has to say methodological. He's talking about scientific claims, and within scientific claims, they do not accept non-supernatural. They don't accept supernatural claims. They don't.
You think talking about methodological naturalism? It has to say methodological.
When I previously used the quotation from Piglucci, which did say methodological naturalism, you still didn't accept it. It's the same as last time when you refused to accept when Dawkins was actually wrong. I just think you're absolutely blinded by new atheism, and you cannot see the wood from the trees, and you can't admit that there's simply a incoherency in what you're saying.
Yeah, that's because it's patently false. I have dozens of quotes of methodological naturalists saying, yes, you can accept supernatural causes, as in all of the papers I listed that are actually supernatural published.
Rupert Sheldrake, that was the name you pointed out.
No,
I mean, the very fact,
not a methodological naturalist.
The very fact, yes, of course I know that. The very fact you had to use Rupert Sheldrake shows how desperate you are to prove a fringe opinion as being the main opinion.
No, I don't have to use him. There are thousands of papers.
Rupert Sheldrake first.
No, there are thousands of papers, and that doesn't help your case at all. That's just an ad hominem. He has academic published papers in journals by methodological naturalists.
Why did you use somebody who absolutely is not accepted by new atheists?
Because he's a very famous name that anybody can search and find papers for.
No, because he is somebody that is not accepted, meaning his claims are seen as unscientific and pseudoscientific.
Yes, so is all parapsychology, but they can publish papers in academic journals that are methodological naturalist journals. The methodological naturalists do not reject the supernatural just out of hand a priori. They do not do that, which is we can prove that because they
So
accept
tell me this.
papers in
Tell me this.
journals.
What does methodological naturalism mean?
It means the application of just methodological sciences that are verifiable to the natural world.
To the natural world. Okay. And what type of explanations do they actually use?
Natural ones,
Thank God.
because there's no evidence of the supernatural.
That's what I was trying to get to. That is literally the only thing I was trying to get you to admit. They use natural explanations.
Correct.
That's what they do.
Because there is no evidence of the supernatural, and that's it.
Okay.
If there
But you're
was,
just
you
showing
use
your
it.
papers that they don't look
Like
for.
literally
know
ask anyone
you know
who
what?
is a logical
Do you
naturalist
admit,
if
do
there is
you
evidence
admit,
of the supernatural.
wait,
They
hang
will.
on, hang on. Do you admit philosophical naturalism is a faith?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Job done.
I'm happy to say that. I'm not a
Job
philosophical naturalist.
done.
It's definitely possible for there to be supernatural.
I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that because you admitted something which new atheists are not really comfortable with.
Sure.
All right, can we move on, or can we just bring someone else on?
Okay, yeah, you guys mentioned like the very beginning, Hamza, you were talking about how science and Islam aren't in conflict, and you brought up the fact that many things in science originate in Islam, and I totally agree. Lots of things in science originate in Islam. That's where algebra and arithmetic came from.
Can I just repeat what I said? Because you just misquote me from the off.
Sure.
Okay. I said, from my many discussions on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, comment section, all these kind of things, Speaker's Corner, whatever it may be, the atheist has this idea that it's science versus Islam. That and what we've demonstrated at the start of this stream was the fact that the foundations of the science used today emanated from Islam, from Muslims, Ibn Sina and such. Yeah. So the idea that Islam can be against science when it kind of originated the modern science we have today, you accept that particular point, yeah?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like Islam has made massive contributions to science, like algebra and arithmetic are.
Oh, we're talking about the fact, yeah,
Math is
the
part of
method we're
science.
talking about,
Actually, the scientific method itself.
the actual method itself.
Right. Math is kind of important in that. So Islam invented math, which is it's huge.
No,
for science.
Muslims did not. Muslims got it from the ancient Hindus, the Brahmins, and these types.
Well,
so
algebra and arithmetic. So
yeah,
those
the thing is, we're not making the claim that from like the Greeks weren't important. The Greeks were super important.
right. I'm agreeing with you. I agree that Islam was a huge in science.
Let's go to the fun part. Where do we disagree?
Right. So the disagreement is the genetic fallacy. The fact that Islam made contributions in making science doesn't mean that there isn't conflict between science and Islam. So the conflict is the fact that because of the way science is now, it does conflict with Islam. There are contradictions in the way, because of how we require evidence in science, that Islam cannot support evidence in that way. Therefore, there is a contradiction between science and Islam.
Okay, so first, I would say the genetic fallacy. I would say that's we're not making the claim just because Muslims were pivotal in science. Therefore, science doesn't contradict with Islam in terms of its claims. What we were saying was it doesn't contradict in terms of the flourishment of science and the flourishment which was enhanced by the Islamic values, such as the value of truth and knowledge and these types of things, and saving a life is like saving all of mankind. So the values of Islam. So we're talking about Islam doesn't hinder science from that perspective. We weren't saying because Muslims were pivotal in science, therefore nothing in science can ever contradict Islam. That's a complete straw man. We never said that.
Wait, I thought Hamza said the whole thing that atheists were saying was that there's a conflict between Islam and science.
Yeah, and
I said the atheists say they have science, we have faith.
Right.
Yeah. Atheists also have faith, though, and Tom admitted that.
I don't have any faith in my position at all. But so if
you
you
of course you do.
Wait, Hamza. So when the atheists are saying
faith in the uniformity of nature,
I don't have faith in that at all. That's demonstrable induction. I have induction for that. But
wait. For induction to work, for science to function, metaphysically, you have to have a belief in the uniformity of nature.
No, you don't.
So you don't believe in the uniformity of nature?
No, there are actually many laws of nature that have changed over time. You don't.
No. Tom, laws of nature, or what we perceive to be laws, them changing, ontologically, the existence of a uniformity of nature. You don't think you have faith in that?
Right. If it changes, it's not uniform.
No, we're not talking about our understanding of our theories, which change all the time.
Oh yeah, you're right. So like, for example, gravity.
Fundamentally,
Right. I understand what you're saying. So gravity itself used to be repulsive at the early stages of the universe. And
again, we're not talking about our view. We're not
right.
talking about
I
our
understand. I
thinking.
understand.
We're talking about ontologically, metaphysically,
Yes,
that there is a
I
uniform
understand.
nature. You're saying you don't believe that?
Correct. Gravity literally changed. It was not the same all the time throughout all the time.
Tom, I
Can I
don't think you understand me. We're talking
Let
about
Imran clarify. Let Imran clarify, because
So the
yeah.
physical force of
no, let
gravity.
Imran clarify.
So Tom, just want to make that point, Tom. So the point that this is similar to the point that I was making earlier. So now you're saying that did the reality of gravity change, or did
reality
the
of
idea
gravity
about
changed.
gravity
At the beginning of
change?
the universe, gravity was repulsive. It pushed things away, and now it's attractive, so it pulls things together. So gravity literally, physically, ontologically changed from the early universe to today. The laws of nature have changed over time, ontologically.
So I just want to understand this. So in your is everything in your stream of consciousness uniform?
No, I don't know what you mean.
So let's take a part of the universe that you're not in at the moment. Is it the same? Is it let's say the other side of the planet, for example? Is it under the same physical laws that the part of the planet that you're on in your stream of
Mostly
consciousness?
yes, but some parts no.
Is it the
Like, that's
same?
kind of the point of relativity, is that they're relative. The laws of physics are relative to your perspective in that case. So no.
So, and that's just you're making a little sort of just a squeak at saying no, but actually what you mean is that there's nothing substantially different between somebody, let's say Tom X on the other side of the planet having their experience of the universe, and you on your side of the experience of this planet having your experience. Is there any change in the physical laws for them? So let's say the relativity in terms of where you are compared to the other side of the thing out of it. Is the universe different over there in terms of its laws than it is here?
No, it would be different
Okay.
past in the time frame, not in the current time frame.
Sure. So so that's the point of it being uniform. So can we spread that out across the universe?
No, we can't, because there are certain cases where the laws of physics can and do change.
So if you're traveling through the universe, are the laws of physics changing for you as you're traveling?
Yes, depending on your location. Yes. So the
Well,
laws of
give me an
physics,
example. Give me an example.
like if we could travel faster than the speed of light and go back in time, we could go to the point in time where gravity was repulsive, like at the Big Bang. Like that's the one I know of. But there are other cases where.
So I want you to talk about now. If you're traveling through the universe, will you travel through a region of the universe where the laws of physics are different from where you were, say, before?
Sure, if I went through a black hole.
Yeah. So this is proving the point. Because what you're doing is you're looking for the most esoteric out there theory to put forward as a possible explanation for an out. What reality is that universe is uniform. You're trying to look for those exceptions. Like if I went back to when the Big Bang, when the inflation initially happened, the circumstances might have been different. Or if I went through a black hole, maybe something would be different within the black hole. Now, you're being asked a very straightforward question, which you're sort of trying to slip through, is the universe uniform? Now, that's an assumption within science. If it wasn't, then what's the point of your experiment? Because what could be true for you in this part of the universe would be false for you in another part of the universe.
Yeah, it's generally the same in many cases. It doesn't need to be perfectly the same. So
okay, so we agree then. That's the point that was being made.
No, because uniformitarianism is the assumption that it's always been the same and can't change. Like no
one's making that. No one's making that statement.
Okay, so then then we wouldn't disagree. It can change. So I don't assume it's uniform at all.
To make it easier, Tom, do you believe science has presuppositions?
It depends on your worldview.
So
Tom, am I here?
Wait, hang on.
Yes.
So for science to actually function, you need maths, you need logic, you need testimony. Yeah, do you admit that?
Math and logic, yes, those aren't presuppositions.
No, as in you need science can't prove logic, can't prove mathematics, it can't prove the testimony being a root of knowledge. So science needs these other things for it to function. Do you admit that?
Yes, those aren't presuppositions, though.
No, but you need them to do science,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And do you also believe that for us to be able to do science, we have to have a mind which can actually arrive at truth?
No, not necessarily.
You don't believe that?
Well, no, because fallibilism, you don't actually need truth in that case. But I don't see your point. So yes, we do need math and logic for sure. We need a mind that functions to some degree.
For us, and I mentioned this earlier on, we value truth. We not only can we arrive at truth, we also value truth.
Sure.
And all of these things, in essence, you can't justify using science. You can't use science to justify maths, logic, or the value of truth or testimony of these things, right? These are all things which come together, and then you use that to build the scientific case.
Sure, but those aren't presuppositions. Like I don't presuppose math and logic.
You need presuppositions from the perspective that prerequisites. I think that would be a better.
Well, sure,
term.
there's lots of prerequisites to science.
Yeah.
Science isn't
So
self-contained.
what I'm really trying to get at is to challenge the idea of scientism, that science being the only root of knowledge.
Right. I'm not a science. I don't adhere to scientism. I think
Well,
it's
that's
false.
great. That's great. That's good.
Okay.
I was just seeing if you believe in scientism, because
Oh yeah, no,
science
definitely. You can have knowledge.
is something which is quite prevalent. I'm actually happy. I'm actually happy you're an atheist who doesn't believe in scientism.
Yeah, essentially no scientists or philosophers accept scientism anymore. We accept that there are kinds of knowledge, like conceptual knowledge, things that are true that we can know just by thinking about it.
We still have, we still have popular cultural scientism, right? So
yeah, sure. I don't really follow the popular culture stuff, so I don't really know much about that.
Yeah, but it is something we should challenge, because
all right, finally we've agreed on something. Tom, I'm going to chunk you off now. I'm going to let this other I am a new atheist on now.
But just do I have your permission to copy again?
What's that?
Do I have your permission to copy this onto my channel again?
Yeah, I don't mind.
Oh, thanks. All right, thanks, guys. Talk to you later.
Thanks, dude.
How much longer, Hamza? We've been on here for a while.
Let's just see this I am a new atheist, see what he's all about, and then give some Muslims some questions. Because I'll be honest with you, right? I wanted the stream to be something to learn, right? I wanted to come off the stream and know about Darwin evolution, know its basis, know its foundations, know what their claims are, know what data they're using, learn about the genetic coding and all of this kind of stuff. And then as a Muslim house, we're gonna have to do another stream on that. We made a mistake letting on J Mike early. That was the problem. It took us off track.
Can I just I just want to really because I think one of the things that I've found, particularly in the first discussion and actually in all the discussions, is there's an avoidance of just being straightforward with what you're saying. It's almost like a defensiveness. And I don't know why that's the case. Really, it's really straightforward questions. Do you believe that the universe is uniform? I mean, the answer to that is it has to be, right? I mean, if you're going to be doing the science and you're going to have laws that would apply in this universe, then those laws would have to apply uniformly.
Yeah.
So the idea that I'm going to find that little thing like the black hole. If I went in a black hole, maybe the laws would be different. It's the exception that proves the rule, and it's these sorts of slipperiness in sort of having a conversation that doesn't really get you anywhere. And I'm surprised that this is where the conversations are going.
Yeah, Imran, within your field of work, you have to get measurements right. And as you know, as a doctor, you get measurements wrong in your medical exam and you're done. You're finished, right? So imagine I'm doing the medical exam with you and I'm kind of like, well, in quantum mechanics, sometimes a particle can exist and not exist at the same time. Sometimes it can act differently if it's observed, and all this type of stuff. And then it's like, well, is this really? I start challenging the most basics of the most basic knowledge that we have, based upon some I don't know, Copernican interpretation of quantum mechanics or many worlds or whatever it is. You can always do that, but it's just absolutely pointless. I mean, you literally you get nowhere. And the very fact that when Tom came on board and he tried to say, no, methodological naturalism allows supernaturalism, and then he used Rupert Sheldrake, is, for anyone who knows, he's absolutely ripped apart. No one takes him seriously, yeah? So for him to try and use that, I mean, from the very, it is a flat-footed assumption. You just walk into a discussion that someone's going to buy that. Like, we're not going to buy that. Like, how will you take, And if it's the case that Rupert Sheldrake's right, why is it that PZ Myers and others got involved to get his TED Talk banned? Because they said it's pseudoscience, not based on his results, based upon his methodology, that there's something beyond the natural, right? So one thing I do like about Tom is he admitted that philosophical naturalism is a faith, even though he tried to say he doesn't have faith. But
yeah, we take something from it. It's cool. Right, let's see what this geezer's all about. All right, I'm a new atheist. The floor is yours.